Story 1. When my nephew was 5 years old, he asked me to take him to Disney on Ice. I said yes. When his mother, my sister, came home, I told her. She asked him, "Can I go too?" He said no. I had just received my tax return, so I spoiled him that night. He died in March 2023 at the age of 31. He destroyed his body with illegal drugs and alcohol. He went to the emergency room because his body was swollen. He was septic. He died 11 days later. I still miss him very much. Please do not use drugs. Story 2. My grandfather used to make me tea every morning during summer breaks. We would sit on the porch in silence. No phones, no television. Just the sound of birds and the smell of jasmine. I was a child, so I did not realize how rare that kind of peace was. Now that he is gone, I would give anything for just one more cup. Story 3. My grandmother used to pick me up from kindergarten, and we would walk past a field with horses. She always brought dry bread or carrots so we could feed them together. They were so pretty. Story 4. My mother had a 3-year cancer journey. She died at 73. In the throes of cancer, she asked me if I would go on a sightseeing trip through the Rockies for a week. I said yes immediately, but then realized I had never been alone with her for any extended amount of time, let alone a whole week. My brothers never took her up on her offer for this reason. It was unbelievable. I learned a lot about her that I never knew. We both knew this would be it. We would never be able to do this kind of thing again. She died a year later. I took many pictures of us and the trip. I put them together into a bound photo book. 10 years later, I still flip through the book. It seems like just yesterday. Story 5. When my grandfather was on his deathbed, he could barely respond to anything. However, when I was leaving with my 3-year-old daughter, she made a silly noise and he laughed. My last moments with him summed him up perfectly. He always brightened when the children were around. Story 6. My buddy Martin is dead. We once drank a whole night together in Aachen, Germany. At one point, we sat in front of the Dom, a huge church, and talked about the world. The sun was rising, it was summer, around 23 degrees Celsius, and it was a perfect moment. God, I love this boy like I should love my brother. See you around when I get there. Story 7. I was a toddler, and I remember crawling into my grandmother's lap, watching moonlighting, and eating chicken and biscuit crackers with sprayed cheese. Story 8. My dad was looking in on me the last time I saw him alive. He did not want to wake me up, so he kissed my forehead, stopped in my doorway, and quietly closed my door. I wish I had told him I was awake and that I loved him. Story 9. My late ex-partner lost his mother when he was very young. His father remarried, and he ended up as the black sheep, unwanted. For 14 years, he never received a Christmas gift. In his last December, I gave him a Nintendo DS, and he was very emotional about it since nobody had cared for him for quite a while. Story 10. My sister-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer, treated, and was cancer-free for about 8 months. Then it returned in her lungs and brain. We knew she was not going to survive. In August, we were told she had 3 months to live. I visited her the day after we received the news, and she said she was very sad she would not live to enjoy another Christmas because she loved it so much. So I decided that if she did not make it to Christmas, we would bring Christmas to her. We had a wonderful Christmas dinner with a tree, decorations, and gifts. The event was held at a beautiful location by a lake. The chef, an old friend of my brother and sister-in-law, put in extra effort and made beautiful little desserts shaped like Christmas trees. It was amazing. I have very warm memories of that night. She passed away 3.5 months later, a week after my daughter was born. It was a chaotic time. Story 11. When we were kids, my sister and I used to rent movies and buy hot Cheetos with cheese. I remember we were walking with the movies and the Cheetos. Story 12. My grandma was a great person who taught me what love is. She passed away a decade ago. Sometimes, when I think of her, I feel as if someone is placing a hand on my forearm. First, I was shocked, but not anymore. Story 13. The last time my father smiled at me and said he loved me and meant it was long before he disowned me. It has been 11 years since that time. Story 14. I was on a bus with my mother in the south of France, right after sunset, driving past sunflower fields. What a wonderful world came on the radio, and I began crying, realizing how much I would miss her one day. Roughly 10 years later, we lost her. But what a fond memory. Story 15. We celebrated his 18th birthday and talked about what we would do on my 18th birthday and what gift he would bring me. Story 16. When I was a little girl, we took family vacations to the beach every summer. My dad used to take me out into the water and told me once that if you float under the water before the wave crashes, it feels like you are flying. My dad passed away 10 years ago. I moved to the beach where we used to vacation and often think of that moment. I taught my son and we go out there together in my dad's memory. Story 17. My great-grandmother could be a scary lady. When I dropped out of college, my mother's punishment was that I had to tell her to her face. I was terrified. She could cut you up with words. I sat across from her, gave her the news, and waited for her to chew me out, much to my mother's smugness. She nodded at me and said, "It's all right. You made it way further than I ever did in school, and you can always go back someday. I'm proud of you." I was too shocked to respond, but I think of that moment often and hope she's still proud of me. Several of my grandparents have passed, but my fondest memories are all centered around the kitchen. Sitting and eating with them or watching and learning how to cook from them. I miss them all very much. Story 18. Miss hanging out with one of my uncles. He was the only male figure in my childhood who made the effort to visit me regularly, just to spend time with me, talk about all sorts of things, and surprise me with unusual gifts like a large bag of toys he collected from a crane machine over several weeks at his favorite hangout. I miss it. Story 19. A summer evening when I was a child. You know those late summer evenings when the sun is about to go down? My grandmother was putting me in a cardboard box. With the help of her German Shepherd dog, she dragged me like a sled through the surrounding fields. I miss those innocent and joyful days. Story 20. My mom had been fighting cancer for 3 years. During her last month, she had been in and out of the hospital. Her energy was completely drained, and she didn't want to eat or drink much. It was so hard to get her to do physical therapy at home. The week before she passed, we were outside on the porch, me, her, and my brother. That particular day, she had a surge of energy. She drank passion fruit tea that I made. It was a hot day. Mosquitoes bothered us, but she did her physical therapy exercises rather enthusiastically, saying she had to beat cancer to see my daughters get married. My daughters were only 3 and 7. They were very close to my mom. That was the happiest I saw her before it all ended. 5 days later, she wasn't doing well. We took her to the hospital and she was admitted. 2 days later, the doctor told me everything that needed to be said. She passed away the following night. I was in the room and never left her side. I didn't know it at the time, but I was also pregnant with my 3rd daughter. I wish I had known so I could have told her. She would have loved that. Cancer is the worst. It destroyed her and tore us apart badly. I haven't cleared her room yet. It's been almost 2 years. The room still smells like her. The magnesium oil and lotion we massaged on her. The faint smell of chocolate she liked to nibble on. I kept her handbag as it was. Her notebook, pen, glasses, and toothbrush are still inside her bag. I miss you so much, Mom. Story 21. Mom was in palliative care, dying from the lung cancer that she had fought for the last 3 years. It had spread into her brain, and she had lost her ability to speak and nearly the ability to move. My wife and I were visiting that afternoon in her room, and she was tired. So tired between the cancer and the drugs. We had a good visit, talking with her as best as we could. Old friends came in to visit, so my wife and I decided to say goodbye and visit the next day. I went in to give Mom a hug, and she held me tightly with every last ounce of her strength. The deepest, most loving hug a mom could ever give. I did not want to let go. She did not either. But hugs end. I told her we would visit the next morning. She died that night. I think she knew that would be the last hug she would ever give me. I think she was giving me her strength and love for the coming days, weeks, months, and years when I would need her. I still remember her hug, and I don't think I will ever forget it. It has been 10 months and 6 days since she died. I miss you so much, Mom. Thank you for everything. I love you. Story 22. Sitting in my classroom laughing after school one day, a couple of months after her son was arrested for murder, I thought of my friend. She was the kindest person I have ever met and was heartbroken that her son had taken a destructive path involving drugs and addiction. He had moved to Colorado and started running with a gang. He became involved in a drive-by shooting over owed money. My friend was heartbroken for the victim's family and for her son, who will never have a future now. He is incarcerated for life. He had just been found guilty, and my sweet friend had been deeply depressed since it happened. She was usually bubbly and vibrant, so I hated seeing her like this. I asked all my classes to write down their best jokes, and I had my friend stop by my room after school so we could read them together. Some jokes were really funny and some were really bad, but we laughed and cried together over lives lost because of drugs. She knew I was a recovering drug addict, so I could relate to her pain over how destructive drugs are. We laughed, read jokes, and prayed for healing. That was a Thursday. I took Friday off, and over the weekend she suffered a major stroke and passed away. I miss my sweet friend so much. I taught her children in my dual enrollment college class, so she was with me through them. I cherished that afternoon because, for the first time in months, she was able to laugh and be the person I remember. Fly high and give Jesus a good game slap on the butt for me. Story 23. My dad visited me not long after I moved to Spain and enjoyed every moment of his visit. I particularly remember a Sunday morning when I suggested we go get some breakfast. We went to a bakery and got a small tray full of fresh pastries. He was as happy as a small child and enjoyed watching me confidently order many things in Spanish. That was during the brief period when he was in remission. Up until the end, he loved to talk about that trip. He also met the man who would eventually become my husband on that trip. My dad swore that if I didn't marry him, he would. Story 24. My most beautiful memory was with my father, who passed away when I was 15. He died suddenly, but he passed away in my arms. I had been very inexpressive throughout my life until I saw him take his last breath. I whispered, "I love you," in his ear. That was the first and last time I ever told him that. I still remember that moment as a poetic tragedy, how he held me when I came into being and how I held him the same way when he was departing this world. Story 25. Hard to choose a single moment from our brief 3 years together. He called me radiant while recovering from major surgery. I said it was the pain medication talking. He swore it was not. Driving through an endless desert highway in New Mexico, listening to Lord Huron and the Grateful Dead, dancing under the stars to Miles Davis and Frank Sinatra, hiking in Glacier National Park, all the little moments strung together like beads on a necklace. We had no idea how quickly it would end. Story 26. My stepdad and I had a conversation about the size of the universe and the concept of eternity, relating to existence. I was 14 and we fell into a feedback loop about these topics at the dinner table, just the two of us. It was the first truly intelligent conversation I had ever had, and he spoke to me as a peer. We both had knowledge to contribute that was recognized and expanded upon by the other. We even experimented with personal theories and analyzed them together in a constructive manner that brought the conversation to new levels neither of us had ever considered before. I am still and forever chasing that high. He died suddenly of a heart attack a year later. During that single conversation, we shared what we thought would happen after death. During the incredibly difficult years after he died, this conversation played over and over in my head and brought great comfort to me. I still like to think that his energy is out there and present in every little thing in my immediate reality, still pushing me forward to understand. Story 27. My mother-in-law was an absolute angel walking among us. She was sweet, kind, and very patient. She was also a very good painter but hadn't picked up a brush in years. I managed to grow some apples, 3 of them, despite having a black thumb, and we gave her one. She was so pleased that she painted the apple given to her, named it First Crop, and gave it to me as a gift. She passed away a few months later very unexpectedly. It is my most treasured possession now. Story 28. When my grandma was in hospice, she had a good day before her death. We went for a walk around the facility. She stopped at a vending machine and told me to run back to her room and grab a few dollars so I could buy a Snickers for her. She then told me the only thing she regretted in life was not eating more chocolate cake. I think of her every time I see chocolate cake, Snickers, or a margarita. Story 29. Breakfast with my grandfather in October 2019. I took him to the doctor and made him lunch. We talked for hours. It was our last conversation. For days later, he suffered a stroke that paralyzed his entire left side and impaired his memory. He could not remember the date or his location. A testament to his strength of will, he made a remarkable partial recovery and was able to walk with a cane. The last time I saw him, he thanked me for taking care of him when he was bedridden. He passed away in March 2021. Story 30. I used to call my grandmother Old Fart. She would never miss a beat and would snap back with little one. I wish I could hear it again. Story 31. See each other again after years without her knowing I was on my way to her. When she opened the door, she hugged me tightly and teared up. Good memories of that day. Story 32. My dearest friend, another friend, and I went camping in the mountains for the solstice. We set up a pentagram and candles to celebrate, but first we sat by the campfire to have dinner. While we were eating, we noticed a flashlight near the pentagram. It was a very confused forest ranger. We explained that we were white witches. He said, "Well, everything looks okay here. Just make sure your fire is out." Then he left. We all laughed so hard. I miss you, David. Story 33. I was living in Frankfurt am Main at the time and complained to my father about my upcoming trip home to the Pacific Northwest. How expensive and inconvenient it was to do all that just to come home. He agreed with me and reminded me that my grandparents were not going to live forever. I went home and walked into my grandparents' house without telling them I was coming. The look of surprise, shock, and happiness on their faces is one I carry with me forever. It was the greatest secret I ever kept. So worth it. I am so glad I went home that time. Story 34. Last time we visited my grandfather, he told my wife, who was then my girlfriend, to take good care of his buddy. Anytime I close my eyes, I can still see and hear him saying this. Story 35. Watching the Super Bowl with Ray while wearing the Property of Patriots t-shirt he gave me. You will never get me to root for the Patriots. Ray. Miss you, friend. Story 36. My stepsister, I have so many good memories of us just riding around, chatting, smoking marijuana, and just vibing, or riding around on the boat, tubing, and water skiing. She was the only person on my stepmother's side of the family who ever gave me a chance and tried to be my friend. I miss her every day. Story 37. Watching old Western shows with my maternal grandfather. He passed away this spring after being sick for years. Story 38. My grandma probably was not the best parent, but she spoiled us grandchildren. The sweetest memories are of her reading us stories almost every night. She died of COVID-19 in 2021. She was 90 years old. Bless her soul. Story 39. It's a toss-up. I can remember my father sharing a Hershey bar with me on the streets in Quebec. That is one of my first memories. Then I remember the last words he spoke to me. He had dementia and was locked in for the last year or so, staring, apparently unaware of his surroundings. I had wheeled him back to his room after a family visit, and just as I hugged him, he said very clearly, "Love you." I looked in his eyes, and he was there just for a minute. Story 40. My sister was my best friend, lawyer, coworker, and marriage counselor. In the end, I was her caregiver when she battled cancer. Story 41. Walking with my grandmother down the block to the mailbox so she could send letters to her sons who were in the military far away. She wrote to them every single day. Story 42. My grandma had Alzheimer's disease. I loved her. She was my sole cheerleader in all my academic pursuits. I loved listening to the stories she told as I laid my head on her lap. During her final months, she was terrified that she would forget me. And then she forgot me. I miss her very much. Story 43. Just as in Fast Cars by Tracy Chapman. We were driving in your car. Speed so fast I thought I was drunk. City lights spreading out before us. Your arm felt nice around my shoulder, and I thought I could be someone. Story 44. My grandmother died in 2020 at 97 years old. She always considered me the most fashionable person in the family, second to her. I could always impress her with high heels, a sequin sweater, and oversized costume jewelry. One year, I showed up to Christmas in a more understated look. I do not even remember what I wore. It must have been jeans and boots. She looked me up and down and said, "Oh, I always look forward to seeing what you are wearing. I guess it was nothing special this year. I have not been so insulted or laughed so much since." She was genuine. Story 45. My grandma calling me by two different versions of nicknames of my name is currently stuck in my head. I am trying not to forget it, as unfortunately I do not have an audio or video of her saying it. And she is now gone. I cannot hear it again. She passed away recently, and she was the best grandma. Story 46. The week before my partner's unexpected passing, we started laughing so hard we were in tears. I cannot even remember what we were laughing about now, but I will never forget how it felt. It was such a beautiful moment together, and then he was gone. Story 47. About 75% of the time spent with my dad in the last couple of years of his life was taking him to medical appointments. I was usually a bit rushed because driving to his house, the appointment, his house, and back to my house always took at least several hours. I also had medical obligations with my husband and his mother. But after every appointment, my dad and I always took time to stop at Starbucks on the way home and sit for a few minutes with a drink. I came to mentally associate a vanilla latte with calm. Whenever he was in the hospital, I would stop at Starbucks on my way to see him and get a latte, and I swear it settled my nerves. I miss our coffee dates and those few quiet, unhurried minutes we had together. He has been gone a long time now, and I have not had a vanilla latte in years. Story 48. Too many to list, but I can still hear my grandfather calling my name in my head. It has been 24 years since he passed. My goodness, I miss my grandparents so much. Story 49. I have an almost ethereal feeling memory of me as a teen sitting on my maternal grandmother's bed as she was lying down. She and I were just there in her room one afternoon as the sunbeams were shining through her white lace curtains. She had a 1930s-style, one-story home. Her bedroom was in the back with her rose garden right outside her windows. Her garden was in the back behind her room too. My mom and little sister were in the back doing some yard work to clean up my grandmother's garden, since it was rarely tended to anymore due to her elderly age. As we were on her bed, she spoke with me about listening to my mom and following her rules because my mom is a good mom. She also said I was a very good girl with a good heart and I would have a good life if I worked hard over time. She gave me a green felt ribbon that my mom used to tie her hair up with when she was a kid in the 1960s. She was in her early 80s when she said this. I remember she slept the majority of her mornings and afternoons, so I was surprised to see her awake when I peeked into her room after going to the bathroom. My grandmother and I never really had one-on-one time together in the years I knew her, especially since there were 3 of us kids running around. So this memory lives in my heart and mind as a cherished moment between her and me. Story 50. That's the easiest question for me. It was the night my wife finally said she loved me. We were married for 44 years until she passed away in January. Story 51. This is going to sound strange at first, but I remember hearing my daughter being gently teased by her babysitter, and my daughter telling her that she wasn't a girl. My daughter was 7 or 8 at the time. My daughter came out as transgender at 16. The babysitter was the daughter of a man I knew from high school. She would babysit at my ex's house since she lived nearby. She, her father, and stepmother moved away when my daughter was 9. After her father and stepmother divorced, he and I kept in occasional contact until about 4 years ago. When I told him that my younger assigned male at birth child was now my daughter, he had no problems with it. I was also in touch with his daughter, who was then 21. We talked about how she used to feminize my daughter's name and chuckled at it. especially now that my daughter had come out, though definitely not using a feminized version of her birth name. 2 years ago, my stepdaughter died of an accidental drug overdose. My daughter, and my husband wonder if even then his daughter knew my daughter was transgender. We think she did, but I just miss her smile. My children were happy that she was becoming their big sister because they already felt like she was. There had been significant trauma in the several years before she died. I just wish she had known how to love herself as much as we all loved her. Story 52. There are many memories with my grandparents. During summers, we spent the breaks with them. Every morning, my grandmother asked what to cook for lunch. My brother and I ordered our favorites day by day. On the corner of the kitchen table, my grandfather and I solved crosswords together. Sometimes, he woke me up very early and asked me to join him to go to the market. Many small and lovely memories with them. Story 53. The people I have fond memories of. Well, I'd argue most of them are not good people. But they were good to me. Learning what they did and who they really were caused them to die for me the first time. And then they died in truth. I say that more to remind myself of the people they hurt than to tell you about it. They were kind to me, and I forever have to carry what I learned they did to others in my head. That split is hard to reconcile, even today. My grandfather taught me to drive on a dirt road when I was about 6. I'd sit on his lap and he'd let me steer the car, holding the steering wheel while I did to make sure I didn't wreck. He died alone in prison. Almost no one went to claim his ashes. My dad went, though I still think he shouldn't have. He needed the closure, though. My grandma made the best cinnamon toast I ever tasted. I'm still not 100% sure what she did, but the layer of cinnamon sugar on top would almost solidify and crack when you bit the toast. I've almost figured out how to make it myself now. I've got the taste right, but I still can't get the texture the way she did. I remember when she was at the end. I was in the hospital with my dad's side of the family. My aunt and I were laughing because I was showing her the ASDF movies. She'd never seen them. I had to laugh. I didn't know how else to handle it. My Nana is the reason I like baked potatoes. They're one of my favorite foods. I was an incredibly picky eater as a kid, and she got me to try a baked potato with butter, salt, and pepper. I remember scattering her ashes at the beach. I was there, along with my mom, my mom's surviving siblings, and some cousins. I got to be the one to scatter the ashes. The sea breeze was so strong that even though I waded out almost to my knees in the ocean, it still blew ashes back. My squeamish family was all screaming and trying to run. I said, "What? It's just Nana." It was a fun time. My pawpaw would turn off his westerns and put on cartoons for me whenever I went over. He was bedridden for most of the time I knew him, but people always told me they couldn't believe he'd turn off his westerns. He'd get mean, real mean if anyone else wanted to watch the TV. But he'd change it for me. I still remember the last time I saw him alive. It was the first time I ever saw anyone on life support. He had so much morphine in his system that he was not lucid. But when he heard my name, he opened his eyes and tried to talk. At least half of the people on this list were not good people. The other half questionable. I don't know enough to say. Love the people who are still alive. Make fond memories with them. And, for those of you with little ones in your life, you never know what random moments will literally form the backbone of that child's entire personality. Such simple memories. Sharing a TV, making a baked potato, cinnamon toast, riding down a dirt road. These are things from early childhood, not even 10 years old, some not even 8, at least one possibly less than 6. And I've remembered them fondly my entire life. I still remember them. I probably will remember them for decades to come, hopefully longer. Take time with the people younger than you. Time doesn't have to be extravagant to be cherished. Story 54. As kids, my grandfather taught us how to tear straw wrappers and blow them at a local restaurant. If looks could kill, my grandmother's that day would have done him in. Instead, I was lucky to have him for another 25 years or so. He passed suddenly a few weeks ago. I will forever be grateful my wife and I went to visit 2 months ago. Many of my cousins had not seen him in years. Story 55. There were so many. Our first date, our first kiss. I do under an old oak tree in the summer sun. Seeing her hold our children for the first time when they were born. Just waking up with her there every day. I miss her beyond comprehension. Story 56. Christmas at my grandparents' house. The whole family was there, playing with my cousins. We could hear the adults laughing upstairs when we were down in the playroom in the basement. My grandmother would ask us if we wanted any tonic soda, root beer, or ginger ale, or we could have tea. One year, my aunt crocheted blankets for all of us as gifts. Each one was in our favorite colors. All the cousins loved that. All the men on my father's side of the family have the same laugh. My husband tells me I have the woman version of that laugh. I miss hearing all that laughter, but my brother and cousins still have it, and that makes me happy. My grandfather, my father, the aunt who crocheted the blankets, my grandmother, and the youngest uncle have all passed away now. The house was sold and torn down to build townhouses when my grandparents passed. I wish I could have one more holiday there. Story 57. She fell asleep next to me on the couch, with her cats both sleeping curled up on her. I savored the moment. She looked like a cherub, so peaceful. I sat and drew her with her cats, and I kept it, never showing it to her. I wish she could have talked more about her mental health with me. Story 58. When we traveled by train to a small city near ours, she wore my jacket. We spent a beautiful afternoon in that random yet elegant town. Her voice, her scent, her hugs, although she is no longer here and has already passed, are some of my favorite memories. Story 59. Parents offered to watch the little one so we could go to dinner. I saved half my meal for my mom as a thank you. The food was accidentally thrown away, and I was given the option of a free dessert or a new meal. No brainer, right? I told her the story, and she shook her head in disbelief until I gave her the meal, which was one of her favorites. Once she started eating, she looked like a kid in a candy store. I will never forget her smile. Story 60. She would always come to me, offering herself any way I wanted. I went down on her once, and when she orgasmed, she squirted, completely soaking me. Being me, I just kept going until she stopped squirting and pushed me off. Story 61. Siguro yung pinaka simple pero sobrang stuck sa utak ko was that one random day non-naglakad lang kami. No plans, no pressure, just good conversation. Tahimik lang pero ongoing vibe. Walang anything grand or dramatic, pero alam mo yung feeling na safe ka and you do not have to pretend? That moment felt real, and maybe that is why it stayed. Minsan kasi, the quiet memories hit harder than the loud ones. Story 62. My granddad came over to visit us after we moved from his neighborhood to a new country. I was about 4 years old. He stayed in my bedroom, so I put every teddy bear I owned around the bed to welcome him. He lay down and started throwing teddies across the room. I just remember laughing and laughing with every bear thrown. I remember that and the cacti he kept at his house. I still think of him when I see them. Story 63. Not a specific memory, but the way my grandmother used to smell and how she would smile when she saw me. I was the first grandson in our family and was definitely spoiled. She passed away when I was 15 due to cancer. She was the glue that held all of my extended family together. After she passed, things were never the same. Most beautiful soul ever. Story 64. Whenever I went to my grandparents' house, I would go straight to the backyard with my grandfather and a basket, and we would walk through the yard together. He grew everything, and if something was ready, he would pull it from the ground or pick it off a tree and give it to me. I loved snow peas, so he grew extra just for me. Some of the things he grew were figs, tomatoes, mulberries, strawberries, apricots, persimmons, loquats, fennel, lettuce, almonds, feijoa, and many more. Without a doubt, my love for gardening and growing edible plants comes from him. I am slowly replicating his garden, and last year my loquat tree fruited for the first time. It was a cutting from the tree he planted. I miss him a lot, and this brings tears to my eyes. Story 65. Probably our wedding day and the birth of our children. He had COVID-19, so it's extra special. Our wedding day was perfect. I think that was the happiest I have ever been. A year later, I got pregnant. Then the ultrasounds were not very clear, so we didn't know the gender of our baby. I had a planned cesarean section. My husband wanted a boy very much. I did too, but it would have been fine either way. When he was born, he was very excited. He went out to show the family. My mom said he was the most excited of all the men in our family. Story 66. Last time I ever got to deer hunt with my dad. Second day of rifle season on our property in eastern Kentucky. I ended up shooting a younger buck and got my phone out to text my dad to update him. Never got a response, so I texted him again. Still no response. He was well into renal cell carcinoma at this point, so I wanted to make sure he was all right. I started calling him. Then I heard him shoot. I felt terrible that I was sitting there texting and calling my dad while he was trying to be quiet and wait for a shot. He ended up getting his largest buck ever that day, the last deer hunting trip he ever got to go on. One of the most genuine smiles I had ever seen from the man. 2 years later, I harvested my second largest and still most unique buck to date from the same tree stand using the same rifle, even the same ammunition he had on his last trip. Sunday was actually the 8th anniversary of his passing. It was 3 weeks shy of his 56th birthday and a week short of my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. Story 67. He always believed in me. He always said, "You are going to amount to big things." I miss him. He was the only person in my family who was kind. Story 68. My dad committed suicide at 51. I was 18. When I was a kid, he would buy giant bags of cereal, usually Cheerios and Fruit Loops, lay down a tarp, and teach me how to catch them in my mouth. After a few hours, the whole floor would be covered. We would collect everything and feed the leftovers to random animals like ducks, marmots, and seagulls. Right before he passed, we went out for dinner and were joking around. He laughed, a comically evil and loud laugh. The whole restaurant went quiet and all eyes were on him. It is something I refuse to forget about him. Story 69. My grandfather would sit in his upstairs office and play the mandolin. When I was a child, whenever we were visiting and I heard him from downstairs, I would sneak up to the top step and sit to listen to him play. The sound of a mandolin still takes me right back to that step. Story 70. The day of my ex's passing out parade in the British Army, he was so proud and it made me cry. 6 months later, he was deployed to Afghanistan and lost his life. He was only 19. Story 71. My friend was a shocking driver. Bless her. She once thought a car had cut her off, so she stuck up 2 fingers. They followed us all the way back to my house. One, very smart in a black suit, asked what she thought she was doing. She tried to flirt with him and really made him laugh. I was cringing so hard. Turns out they were policemen on their way back from a colleague's funeral. She got a proper telling off, but it was all smiles at the end. She died 3 years ago due to medical negligence. But this story sums her up perfectly. Cheeky, naughty, and the gift of the gab. I miss her so much. Story 72. This must be one of my earliest memories because I could not have been more than 4. My older brother was at school, and my mother and I went for a walk to a nearby church that had a playground. I found a tiny doll, about 1.5 inches tall, with blonde hair and big brown eyes. It did not look valuable at all, so my mother said I could take it with us if nobody came for it after I was done playing. I got to take the doll home, and we walked home hand in hand. I still remember exactly what that doll looked like, but more importantly, the feeling of being loved and protected as my mother walked us home to wait for my big brother to return from school. This was probably in 1969 or 1970. Story 73. Fishing with my father and grandfather. I wish I had appreciated it more at the time. I lost my father when I was 16 and my grandfather at 17. I just remember the peace and the bonding, doing something we could all enjoy together. I miss you and love you both so much. Story 74. My sweet friend from high school. We briefly dated, and while she was great, we realized this was not for us. We remained close friends for several years afterward. A few years ago, she was the bridesmaid at a mutual friend's wedding. She had married a great man, who was also a close friend of mine, and we were all dancing and having a blast. A year later, she was diagnosed with aggressive cancer, and it was clear she would not survive long. I was planning to visit her, But just days before I was going to leave, she passed away. On one hand, it is agonizing that I never saw her again and never got to say goodbye. On the other hand, my last memory of her is dancing her heart out at a beautiful wedding with all our friends. I return to that memory often. It makes me sad, but also reminds me that love and pain go hand in hand. I truly loved her, and she truly loved me too. She was such a sweet part of my life. I miss her every day, but I am grateful to have had her as a friend for the time that I did. Story 75. When I was a teenager, I moved to the United States. Before I moved here, I had traveled here a few times for vacation and remember my first time seeing snow as a kid. Once I was living here, I had a moment as a teen during a big snowstorm. Living in the northeastern part of the United States, there are many trees. I remember waking up, looking out the window, and seeing all the snow falling slowly. No cars, no sound, just every home completely white, every tree covered. No roads could be seen as they were all under the snow. Everything looked so clean, bright, and beautiful. I remember feeling total calm, peace, and warmth. I don't know how to describe it, but it felt like I was simply existing, fully in that moment, feeling happy, calm, full, and content. Decades later, I still remember that feeling as if it happened just yesterday. I tell that story and those emotions because a few years ago, I met a woman who loved me truly, genuinely, and completely. Her love for me was as real as it gets. I know this because one morning I woke up next to her in bed, and the moment I looked at her, I felt the same feeling I had as a teenager on that snowy day. My entire body was vibrating, and it immediately brought me back to that moment. I woke her up and kissed her, then pulled back and said nothing, just stared at her, took a deep breath, and it felt like time stopped. She was my soulmate, but life had other plans, and she ended up leaving me. People might say, if she was really your soulmate, you'd still be together. But no, you can absolutely meet your soulmate and still have it not work out. I was sadly not ready to receive her love. Our relationship fell apart because of me. Life hit me hard, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I had much growing up to do and still do, but I pushed my soulmate away. I still think about that moment and remember it fondly, with a bit of sadness as well. My only solace is knowing that in another life we will be together, and that in other lives I've had her. I do hope to live a life where my last breath in this world is one I can take peacefully and happily, knowing that she is right there by my side before I return to whatever I was before I came into this world. Story 76. It was just a few days before our first Christmas as husband and wife. We had just brought all the Christmas gifts home and spread the wrapping paper out on the floor between us. We were sharing a special moment as we wrapped gifts together. Just then, the phone rang. It was my dispatcher. They needed me to report to work immediately for a top priority delivery. My magical moment turned into an all-night delivery run that was not very important. But I was young. I should have just let it ring or unplugged the phone. Story 77. My dad taught me how to draw with such patience. He was an artist for a national newspaper. Sadly, he died when I was 6. He was a true hero to me who supported me in every way. I miss him so much even now, when I am in my 50s. Story 78. Just the two of us sitting on a quiet beach, with her sitting in front of me, my arms around her waist, and kissing her neck. Story 79. Sharing stories and funny things with my best friend when she was alive was a daily habit. She was the only one who truly understood my soul. I miss her so much. She passed away from a brain tumor 4 years ago. Story 80. The last time I saw my grandmother was February 2020. She was suffering from late-stage Lewy body dementia and thought I was my 10-year-old self. It was so cute, a step back in time. I loved spending that day with Grandma. We had lunch and watched Beethoven. Grandma died about 2 weeks later, completely unrelated to COVID-19. She had no idea what was going on in the world. The lucky lady. I have no regrets about our last time seeing each other, and I will forever miss her. Story 81. Walking around this neighborhood a few towns over with my grandmother every Christmas to see the lights. Hot chocolate and dinner along with it. Story 82. My distant uncle was basically a father figure to me when my dad was not around. My dad was working abroad, so I rarely saw him at the time. My uncle filled that emptiness. He would take my brother, me, and his kids swimming, take us to Chuck E. Cheese, play basketball, and help me learn to ride a bike. He filled in for pretty much anything a dad would do and treated us like his own children. We often had sleepovers at his house, and he always did his best to entertain us. He was seriously the sweetest man I have ever met, but had difficulty holding a job after losing one. I later found out that after my aunt divorced him, he struggled and ended up homeless. He passed away when I was in high school, which honestly broke my heart. To this day, my cousin, his daughter, blames my aunt for ruining her life and has never accepted her stepfather. Story 83. The woman I love and I had just been intimate for the first time. We joined a Skype call with our other friends and chatted, but no one knew we had just done that or that we were into one another like that. Someone mentioned turning a random device on, and without missing a beat said, "I know what turns them on." I replied, "That is a damnable lie." Then she started laughing, and she had this playful sparkle in her eyes like I had never seen anywhere else. I miss her every day. She was beautiful, charming, funny, and her eyes could light up a room. Her laugh was infectious. If I could go back, I would give her my whole life if it meant she would still be here. Story 84. My Aunt Jamie cared for me when I was young, and it truly touched me because she was the only person I ever connected with in my family. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.